Elena Ward had a hunger for truth that didn't take excuses. She moved through the world like a light in the dark, uncomfortable for anyone who preferred shadows. For months, she'd tracked the cracks around Vincent Drake's empire, phony charities, shell companies that funneled money like oil through secret pipes, and men who smiled at cameras but whispered bribes at night. She wasn't afraid of doors that said, "Do not enter." She laughed at them. On a rain-slicked night, Elena slipped into the glass tower, thinking she was the hunter. Her laptop hummed like a faithful animal. Her fingers moved quick, practiced, lines of code, backdoors, a dance she'd done 1,000 times. She expected alarms, guards, maybe a chase. She did not expect the silence that felt like a hand on her shoulder. For a heartbeat, she thought she'd been brilliant, invisible. Then the screens blinked, her feed froze, and a voice as cold as the building's facade said, "Looking for something, Miss Ward?" Elena froze. The tower's atrium, visible through the glass around them, swallowed the city light and held it like a secret. Vincent Drake stepped into the frame of her monitor. More than a billionaire, a presence. Neat suit, sharper patience. He didn't look surprised. He looked satisfied in the way people do when they have the next move already mapped. "You could ruin me," he said plainly. "You could burn the empire down with the evidence you've been gathering." Elena's breath tightened. She expected anger, threats, a pile of lawyers. Instead, Vincent leaned forward like someone offering a strange gift. "But I have something you don't," he continued. "I know things about you, too. I know you haven't always stayed on the right side of the law. You've hacked systems, Miss Ward. You've bent rules to find truth." It was a punch to the gut, not from surprise, but from the cold clarity of being seen. Elena's chest tightened. She had always worked in gray to chase white. The files she'd used, the backdoors she'd exploited, she'd done them to light things up. Yet Vincent's calm voice stripped the cloak off her axe and held them up under a white lamp. He could have shredded her life. He could have thrown the evidence to the press with a malicious smile and watched her burn. Instead, he offered a different cruelty, a choice. "You want to expose corruption," he said. "Join me. Use what you know. Use your methods under my eyes. Help me fix the rot you keep revealing. Prove you're not just a vandal of systems, but someone who can help rebuild." Elena's instinct screamed betrayal. Trusting Vincent Drake was like trusting a fox to guard the henhouse. But beneath her fury was a sharper, steadier thing. The truth she'd chased so hard it had become a hunger. If Vincent had leverage on her, he also had access to things she couldn't reach alone. Internal audits, servers that didn't talk to journalists, names that never left boardroom whispers. If she wanted to pull the whole rotten tree out by the roots rather than hacking at a single infected branch, she might need him. She said the only thing she could. "Why me?" "Because you're relentless," he answered, "and because you're dangerous enough to be useful. You make people who think they're untouchable uncomfortable. That's an asset." The agreement was ugly and perfectly honest, an uneasy truth born of power and necessity. They worked in the gray like two sides of the same coin, Elena sliding through systems with the subtlety of a shadow, Vincent opening doors no reporter could pry. They fed each other scraps of truth and watched how those scraps fit together into a monstrous picture. Slowly, painfully, the narrative they'd both been shaping, each for very different reasons, started to line up. They were enemies that became allies, not because one apologized or the other surrendered, but because the story was bigger than either of them. Each had to swallow pride and admit a simple fact. Alone, they could expose little. Together, they could topple institutions. But trust is not built in a day. Elena tested him with questions that had sharp edges. Vincent answered in betrayals that were honest. He withheld, he lied, but never for the spectacle. He admitted his own complicity where it mattered. He revealed names that made Elena's stomach drop. And when the world began to turn its head, when prosecutors stirred and board members canceled dinners, Elena saw a version of Vincent she hadn't expected. A man cloaked in power, but tired of the rot that had, in strange ways, eaten him too. There were nights when they didn't speak, only sent each other files and watchful glances across rooms full of monitors. There were moments when Elena remembered the files Vincent had used to corner her and felt bile rise. There were moments Vincent saw Elena's eyes burn with righteous fury and felt something like respect, and something he'd never admit, a dangerous warmth. Their alliance never shed its edges. It was a thing held together by mutual need and dangerous chemistry. When the big exposure finally hit, documents, whistleblowers, trails of money that led to polite men and their polite crimes, the city gasped. Vincent's empire trembled. People who thought themselves untouchable found themselves under microscopes. And Elena? She kept one hand on the story and the other inside her coat, fingers touching the small, illegal device she used when doors refused to open. In the aftermath, standing on the glass tower's rooftop as dawn bled over the city, Elena looked at Vincent. The skyline reflected in his eyes like shards. They had won something, or at least damaged the thing they had set out to hurt. But victory tasted of ash and bargain. "You could have destroyed me," she said quietly. He smiled, not triumphant, but private. "I could have. I chose otherwise." Elena let out a long breath and for once allowed herself not to be already planning the next battle. The hunter had been hunted. The hunted taught the hunter to survive. Between them lay a fragile bridge, truth on one side and something unnamed on the other. They'd come together in a trap, and in climbing out of it, they'd found a partnership that would keep both honest, or at least complicated.